Today I want to talk a little bit about the balanced weave of plain weave and why it's a positive thing. Here are a couple of little things that I've made on a back. This one is on a backstrap loom, and you can see I used acrylic, white acrylic warp with, I believe, 2 strands of blue worsted weight acrylic. And on this one, this part of it, it was the white acrylic with 1 strand of red. Now you can see that you get 2 totally different fabrics just by using a bulkier yarn. Same warp, same loom, same everything. And that makes the white more visible because the thicker weft is going in the sheds. This is more of a balanced weave. Then you get to this piece. It does have a couple of errors in it, but this was done, I think, on a rigid heddle loom with the same weight, warp, and weft. No difference at all, and that is a balanced weave. Now, there's no wrong or right. This is, right now it's kind of a dish rag in the kitchen, but I want to use it for landscape design. So it's actually going to be a beach house area on the ocean. And then these become waves. So you see how manipulating the balance artistically is fine. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. I'm still formulating the best way to make hand-spun cotton rags. This is a cotton string yarn that it ends up being a beautiful fabric. You could even use it for cross-stitch fabric. It's a beautiful fabric. It's stronger overall than this because it's more balanced. Now you see an Inkle loom, and normally I put about 40 warps on here and I make a belt or leash or something like that. This time I have 100 warps on there, and I'm going to put 50 heddles on here, and I am using a similar string but very thin. It's the weight of crochet thread for both the warp and the weft. And even though this is Inkle weaving, which will give me a warp faced effect, the way this is set up, the weft goes inside like a little tunnel to hold the shed, and then through another tunnel, and it's called warp-faced weaving because you really see the warp. But by using the same weight, the same material, it's going to be a very finely woven warp-faced weaving. Now, this is where you bring in your choice for the weight of yarn. When I've made belts with worsted weight yarn and the same worsted weight yarn as the weft, you get a nice, thick, cushy belt with squish to it because of the wool yarn in that case. This is going to make, and I've made them before with crochet thread, it makes a very fine, soft fabric. Now, this is in search of rags and toilet paper. Currently I can make toilet paper out of muslin, which is fine. Then it gets treated, there is a video up, and it's not the greatest subject, but either in an emergency or if you can't get any, you can make squares of muslin, treat them like cloth baby diapers, soak them in bleach, then rinse them, then wash them, and reuse them. And I'm not, that works fine, and I have a couple of sets already ready if I need them. But what I need to do is almost whatever fabric I make, that then after getting used ends up as a rag has to start out strong. In order for any fabric to make it to a rag or toilet paper, it has to be strong enough in the first place to hold together. So using fine weight crochet thread, or this is baker's twine, and weaving a fine tight fabric, let's say I stitch 2 bands together and I have like an 8-inch wide fabric, and I use that on the table, or I can leave it long, use it as a scarf, and then it kind of looks raggy, so I'm going to make it a rag. I cut it into a rag. It's thin enough to stitch the edges if I need to, and well, then we use it that way for a while. It didn't fall apart yet. Wow, this would be great cloth toilet paper. So you can plan on your items going through several life stages before you have to throw them in the garbage. And to do that, this is sport weight string or twine. This is crochet weight string or twine. And then you get into the more bulky weight acrylics. This is going to last a long time, but it's not very absorbent. So it'll probably never make it to the real rag stage. It'll just get pilly with the acrylics, and will end up getting thrown out or given to the dog, or, you know, it's going to get pilly. That's what acrylic does. What cotton does is get finer and polished before it starts to fall apart. So cotton is a wonderfully strong fabric, and if you start out making a fine cotton fabric, you end up having it around for a while. I want to add something about the inkle weaving and the fine fabric. First of all, when you make heddles, you can, if you have an inkle loom, you can choose 2 or 3 pegs and make your heddles all the same size. These are actually heddles that I made for one of my other looms, and I used a cracker box. And the point is, that particular loom they came off of has a roll bar that is wider, and you have to match your heddle length to your roll bar if you're using string heddles. Now, I don't have a roll bar on here, but using the longer heddles gives me just a little bit more leeway. The heddles that are normally on here are about this tall, so this just gives me a different way to work. But I now have to carry this cracker box around with me to get enough heddles on that length. So I'll probably make about 100 of them and finish the crackers and move on. So that's one thing. If you have an inkle loom, it's best to pick a couple of pegs, write down which ones you've used to make the heddle size. Now, I think you can see that perfectly. These first 6 lines are hand spun cotton, which is right here. And they are much thicker than the string, the equal weight string that is right there. And I think even with the shadow you can see the difference. Now, the reason I have the 6 lines of the hand spun is so I don't want to pull this in too tight, because with inkle weaving especially, you're pulling it tight every time you go left or right. You're doing that with all weaving, and all weaving moves in a little bit, but with a little care and keeping it the width you set it up as gives you just a much nicer fabric. But you can see what that looks like when it's on the loom, and this is what it looks like when it's off the loom. This is actually crochet thread, but it's the same weight. Now, I've had this leash, this is one of the dog's leashes, and 9 years, no pilling, no ragginess. I don't know if my cotton will ever make it to rags, but that's what you want. You want, so if I were to cut this up now and use it as little rags to clean off the food, I still have wonderful cotton fabric. But this is with crochet thread. I don't know if the baker's twine will hold up the same way. So, and as with the Ojibwe loom, a weaving sword is a good thing to have because you can really pack the rows down tight, and that's what you can see here, how tightly they're packed. So this, that's about 3.5 inches wide. And Inkle looms, when you buy one, if you're going to buy one, mine are 3 feet long, and they make 7 feet of fabric. And obviously the shorter or smaller the Inkle loom is, the less of a length you're generally going to get. Some people make Inkle looms. I have 8 pegs other than the tension peg. So if you get a shorter loom, but it has 15 pegs on it, then the back and forth of warping it is going to give you a longer finished item. So when you buy one, you're not necessarily looking only for the length of the Inkle loom. You're looking for the design setup, and if possible, the seller should have a list of how long of a piece of fabric it will make. But my 3 are 3-foot long looms that have 8 pegs, and they make exactly 7 feet with fringe. So this is much easier in a lot of ways than having a backstrap loom and putting a 7-foot warp on it. And it's also a way to use string heddles and get a very tightly packed fine cotton fabric that's going to last for a while.